We are on page 277, and this is the properties page. And this page is going to seem a little overwhelming. And all I can tell you is that we're not expecting perfection or mastery here. We're just going to try and provide an introduction. And so let's go ahead and go through these properties real quick. One thing I'm going to do is read the name of the property and then show the example, okay? It says properties of operations can be used to identify equivalent expressions. And the first one we're going to talk about right here is the commutative property of addition. When adding, changing the order of the numbers does not change the sum. So if you change the order from 3 plus 4 to 4 plus 3, they're equal to each other. Commutative property of multiplication is the same thing. 2 times 4 is equal to 4 times 2. The commutative part basically means just change the order, okay? All right, the associative property looks more complicated, but it's really not. The associative property of addition and multiplication, they're the same property, it's just depending on what operation. When adding more than two numbers, the grouping of the numbers does not change the sum. So in this first problem, 3 plus 4 in parentheses plus 5 would be equal to 3 plus 4 plus 5 outside of parentheses. They're equal to each other because it's all adding. So what's the difference between the two sides? On this side, the parentheses are around 3 and 4. On this side, they're around 4 and 5. But I can prove they're the same. 3 plus 4 is 7. 7 plus 5 is 12. Over here, 4 plus 5 is 9. 9 plus 3 is 12. 7 plus 5 is equal to 3 plus 9. So changing the grouping symbols doesn't change the, they're still equivalent. It doesn't change the answer. It goes with multiplication as well. 2 times 4 inside parentheses, that's 8. 8 times 3 is 24. On this side, we've got 2 times 4 times 3 is 12. What's 2 times 12? It's 24. What's 8 times 3? It's 24. 8 times 3 is equal to 2 times 12. All right, the distributive property is by far the most complicated one to explain. And I'm not going to do too much with that right now. Multiplying a number by a sum or a difference is the same as multiplying each number in the sum or difference and then adding or subtracting. So what that's saying here is, I'm going to cross this one off just for a minute. I'll come back to this one in a minute. So over here, if I have 2 plus 4, that's 8. And 8 times 6 is 48. Over here, if I do 6 times 2, that's 12. Plus 6 times 4 is 24. That's not supposed to be 6 times 8. I messed that up. 6 times 6. 2 plus 4 is 6. So 6 times 6 is... 6 times 6 is 36, and on the other side I have 6 plus, or 12 plus 24, that's also 36. They're equal to each other. I want you to notice what's actually happening here. Over here it's 6 times 2 and it's 6 times 4, and on this side it's 6 times 2 plus 6 times 4. It's all the same numbers, it's just written a slightly different way. We'll talk about that one more later. The identity property of addition is adding 0 to any number does not change its value. That's pretty obvious. The identity property of multiplication is multiplying a number by 1 does not change its value. That's pretty obvious. All right, the example they give us says use a property, write an expression that is equivalent to x plus 3. Well, what's equivalent to x plus 3 is 3 plus x. And I know that because the commutative property of addition states that you can change the order. So the commutative property of addition tells us that you can change the order. That's what that question is asking. Down here at the bottom, for your turn, I'm going to help you with these because I think you'd struggle on them if you tried them by yourself. It says for each expression, use a property to write an equivalent expression and tell which property you used. So for each of these, we write something that's equal to what we're given, and then tell the property. So A times B is in parentheses times C. Do you remember that property that addressed how you can change the parentheses? It's this one right here. It's called the commutative property of, it's called the associative property of multiplication. It's this one right here. It states that you can change where the parentheses are and it won't change the order. So I can do that down here at the bottom. It won't change the value. I can do that at the bottom here. So instead of doing A times B in parentheses then times C, what I could actually do here is A parentheses B times C. It's all the same numbers, A, B, and C, but I changed the order of the parentheses. It says tell which property. The property is the associative property of multiplication. The associative property of multiplication. All right, number 4. 3y plus 4y. So this is exactly like the one I just showed you, how you can multiply by 3 first, or you could actually add first. Since this says 3y plus 4y, we could actually just add up the 3 and the 4 first. And then we're going to multiply the whole thing by y. And you can put the y at the beginning or the end, it doesn't matter. So when you're solving this right here, you get the same thing as if you're solving that. I could even prove it. In fact, I think I will. What if y is equal to 2? I'm going to put down here y is equal to 2. What would the value be? Well, this would be 3 times 2, which is 6. I need to make this a little bit neater. I'm going to prove to you that these two things are equal to each other. I'm going to take a whiteboard here. I'm going to prove it to you. All right, the one they gave us, over here I'm going to write y is equal to 2, and over here I'm going to do 3 right next to 2 means 3 times 2, plus 4 right next to 2 means 4 times 2. 3 times 2 is 6, 4 times 2 is 8, 6 plus 8 is 14. Over here, I have 3 plus 4 is 7, times 2 is 14. 6 plus 8 is equal to 14. That proves that that property, that was the whole point of that property, is that property says that you can rewrite, you can use these properties to rewrite the expressions. They're equivalent to each other. So what property did we use? That one's called the distributive property. And that's the one that I told you is the hardest to explain. But you'll start to recognize it with more practice. And then 6 times 7, this one would be a good one for just changing the order, 7 times 6. And what's changing the order called? That's called the commutative property. And we have to say of multiplication, because there's a commutative property of addition too. The commutative property of multiplication. All right, I already told you, if you're feeling a little stressed out about these properties, I already told you that I don't expect mastery right now. I just expect introduction. So you at least know some of these terms now, and we'll review them as we go. But they're not going to be assessed heavily, and you're not going to fail this lesson because you don't understand these properties. We just want to introduce them and practice them a little bit. All right, thank you.